But because you stand for the right thing, it's imperative for the future of our country that the struggle you are engaged in, being a just struggle, is a struggle that you will prevail in, and you are not prevailing. So the book puts forward some ideas based upon the notion of conflict. Sun Tzu, Clausewitz, Napoleon, all warriors. But their ideas aren't just about moving masses of troops. Their ideas are about motivating people. Their ideas are about positioning themselves to be victorious, sustaining a conflict. So please seek through the terminology that is off-putting to many and delve into what the book is trying to present, which is a framework for discussion on how to better organize this very important activism that exists in our country today, so that it becomes more than just a footnote in American history, that it becomes the movement that can save the future of America. And I'll finish with this. I implore you to succeed, not for me, but for my children and for their children. Because if we don't succeed, if you don't succeed, the future of America is a very bleak, dark future indeed. We have to prevail. So let's work together. Let's find a way to organize ourselves more efficiently, and let's win this most important of fights. Thank you very much.
Ritter has graciously agreed to respond to questions, and so your comments and questions are most welcome. I just wanted to say a word thanks to the First Unitarian Church, and also to my dear friend Bill Densmore, who's worked so hard on so many worthwhile projects in the community, including this one. So thank him for our being here too. Scott Ritter.
This is the part where I get to be held accountable for what I've said. So please just go with the microphones.
Scott, as an Albury and as a worker in the peace movement for years, is that this contempt for the United Nations and its work in guiding great states and small states to true threats to the peace that might merit a decision of international threat to peace and security. That seems to be forgotten. And the contempt for the United Nations is shown over and over by certainly this administration, and really, it seems to me, since about the 1970s. What's your reading on this? Is there any way that we can guide our citizens to returning to that faith in international organization that was once led by Woodrow Wilson and Franklin Roosevelt, for that matter, Harry Truman?
No, it's an outstanding point. First of all, I would say that in addition to being contemptuous of the United Nations, President Bush was contemptuous of the American people, the American Congress, and not just decency, but the law. We know, thanks to an official Army chronology, that the President signed the execute order, meaning the final declaration to commit our troops to war, on August 28, 2002. In the first week of September, the President made a public statement before the General Assembly of the United Nations that he had not made a decision about war, and that he was willing to give every option a chance before making that decision. He sent official after official before the Congress of the United States. He had Condoleezza Rice, he had Colin Powell, he had others testifying that this president had not made a decision about war. They made these statements in September, October, November, and December of 2002. We now know the fact is the president had made an irrevocable decision to go to war in August of 2002. Once you start moving the
masses of material and personnel towards conflict, it's a done deal. It's not a reverse of the process. And so it's not just contempt for the United Nations, it's contempt for the American people, it's contempt for the rule of law. What we have here are two issues, both hubris-based, and I'm not a huge student of the Bible. I think, isn't hubris one of the 7 deadly sins? And so when we talk about, what drives us, let's look at the concept of national hubris. The one that says 300 million people, that's the population of the United States of America, gets to dictate the terms of coexistence with 6.8 billion other people, that's the rest of the world. That apparently, I only have to pull out a coin or a dollar bill and it says, in God we trust. We say, God bless America. God curse the rest of the world. If you're not an American citizen, God does not smile on you. That God only puts his goodwill on 300 million souls. Isn't this just an absurdity? Of course it's an absurdity. And yet, as a nation, collectively, you talk to the American citizens in the streets today, they'll tell you that it's America first and foremost. The rest of the world can just go pound sand. I am an American. USA, USA, I love my country to death. But I've had the opportunity to travel around the world, and I recognize that there are plots of land out there that aren't American soil. And they're populated by people who aren't American citizens. And they don't speak like us, they don't, eat like us, they don't dress like us, but there's nothing wrong with these people. They're human beings. And yet we have this national arrogance to say it's our way or the highway. And that's one of the problems when we speak of the United Nations as an organization. How can we begin to hold our government to account, to deal effectively in a multilateral fashion with the rest of the world, using agreed upon frameworks, if we are dismissive of the rest of the world? And we are truly dismissive of the rest of the world collectively. And then we have the arrogance internal to our country that resides in 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue. And it's an arrogance that has been around prior to George W. Bush. This is the arrogance of the unitary executive, the all-powerful president, especially in times of war. This goes back, this predates Bush, it predates Clinton, it predates Papa Bush, it predates Reagan, it predates Carter, it goes back to Vietnam and even prior to that. From the very beginning of the birth of our country, there has been a debate about the role and responsibility of the President of the United States during times of war. And if you read the Federalist Papers, you'll get an insight to some of the discussions they had. And the conclusion was that we must curtail any tendency on the part of any individual to assume too much power. That's, after all, why we gave birth to the United States of America, to oppose an absolute ruler. And yet, we have enabled individuals enamored with the hubris of the position of authority that we give them to define the presidency in such a way that it operates above the rule of law. It operates outside the framework of constitutional oversight. And yet the American people are so disengaged from this process, partly because we have allowed ourselves to have the military define who we are and what we are. And again, as a veteran of the Marine Corps, I love the Marine Corps. I get choked up every time I see a set of dressed blues walk by because I know what it means to earn that uniform. But that uniform is not American. It's the uniform of the Marine Corps. But America is not defined by the uniform, by F-15 fighter planes